Greetings, 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 greetings. You're watching Black Thought here on the M1 Network, and I'm your host, Dr. Hutchinson. Glad to be here before you today in this way. We appreciate your support and how you have hung in there with us across the years, and you have been a supporter of the M1 Network. We have some great things in store. We're working on some things, and we're glad that you're still walking with us. If you want to know more about who I am and what I do, feel free to go to my website, noelhutchinson.com, and there you'll get more information about me. Let me kind of get into the show. So many moving pieces that are happening. Let me do this. This is something I seldom do on either platform, but I'm also on the radio locally, Huddle Talk for Dr. Hutch, 88.5 FM on Wednesdays. Reason I mention that in this space is because we've been having some conversations over there that have been cross-migrating from conversations over here, which are some pertinent things that we need to discuss. We've been looking at school vouchers. Matter of fact, off the air, I was talking to Dr. Ivory Taylor about this. We were talking at length about how to approach that issue. We're looking at also the bills that are concerning how organizations go about getting voter registration. And so we're looking at that. We have a burgeoning People's Convention coming to us at the beginning of June, beginning of next month, which is People's Convention, touted as People's Convention 2.0. We have a state representative that was allegedly choked by a state trooper. And allegedly is the legal language that says, well, it happened, but in order to be legal, we have to say allegedly. But he was choked by a police officer, state trooper in the midst of what was going on in the Tennessee legislature. So there's just a whole lot of things going on. And on top of that, social media is abuzz, more specifically Facebook, because Facebook now is clamping down on individuals that they feel have abused free speech. And in the midst of getting rid of some right-wingers, they decided that Minister Farrakhan, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, was not worthy to be on Facebook or Instagram anymore. So you have a lot of things moving, a lot of things going on that concern us on a national level. You have some things that concern us on a local level, because it's interesting when you begin to look at, for example, this recent fire we had, I think it was last Friday, in that housing that's right at Danny Thomas. This was housing that was going to give low-income people a chance to stay in the downtown area. It was not, quote unquote, a gentrification move, and now that housing needs to be replaced. It set things kind of off course. So a lot of moving pieces. Let's kind of tackle some of them today, and then we'll pick some others up, and we'll go into those things probably in our next conversation that we have before you. When we look at vouchers, and I kind of made mention of this before, the voucher system has at its core disruption of what we know as the public school system, because the voucher system is designed to take public school money and set it free to be used in the private school arena. And here's the rub. The voucher that you get does not give you a full price or full amount to take that voucher and fully pay for private education. It's not enough. And correct me if I'm wrong, I do believe that many of the Catholic Jubilee schools have closed or are closing. So now you have private schools such as the big, private, famous, elite ones that may be available to take your money, but when they cost $20,000 to $25,000 a year, even $30,000 a year, a $7,300 voucher is not going to cut it. Plus, you have to test and other things. So now you're getting ready to have a proliferation of schools that either might become beachheads or, let's say, school light of those major schools, or just kind of a made-up institution just to take that voucher money. So now the question becomes, can we use that for self-determination in order to help create our own schools? Perhaps, but then also know that this is the beginning of the obvious creation of a educational industrial complex. So there's a whole lot going on. There's a whole lot to consider when you look at this voucher system. And see, here's the other thing. This issue has become politicized to the point where there seemingly is no relief. What do I mean? The Republicans, for the most part, are pushing these vouchers. Our governor's pushing these vouchers. You have somebody at the Department of Education, Betsy DeVos, that pushes vouchers. And so this seemingly is a partisan issue, even though when you look at the state vote, they did not want these vouchers in their community, so it broke down to them being just in Nashville and Memphis. Memphis was the real target. And so what happened is, as they started pulling back from putting the voucher systems in certain counties, that's when those Republicans flipped and said, we will vote for this bill. So that does not bode well for the future. And so even after having my private conversations, we got a two-pronged front on this thing. We got to ask ourselves, can we use this to our benefit? That's the first prong. Second prong is, how can we find ways to fight against this, even if it seems like the traction is going on the other side? Kind of have to look at it both ways. And then with the voter registration piece, we have to also look at that. Because now organizations will be penalized and fined heavily for applications that are not filled out properly. Now, if you ever looked at a voter registration form, you will realize that it's easy to make a mistake if you're not paying attention. And so all of these things are concerted attacks upon some of the freedoms that we're supposed to have as people. Which leads me to the last point that I'll make for today. I'm going to keep these black thoughts kind of brief for the next few moments or times so that you can digest them. Facebook, Instagram, social media has become so huge that it's a question of how do we live without it. And so now here it is. Facebook and Instagram makes a decision. They're going to get rid of some of the what they call right-wing voices. And so they get rid of about 3 or 4 of them, and they include the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in the mix. Now, many of you have peeped, as they say, this game, because now you get rid of maybe about 1/3 of the factions that you consider creating mayhem on this platform of social media. And then you get rid of this major black voice, whether you like him or don't like him. Get rid of this major black voice that has been an advocate for black folk. You get him out of the way. And so, of course, that's created uproar. But now you got to ask yourself a question. Let me take the other view for a minute. Facebook and Instagram are privately owned. They're publicly traded and privately owned. And then when you look at the fact that they're publicly traded, ask yourself, who owns the majority of the shares of Facebook and Instagram? So you have to ask that question. So now if they own the majority of the shares, that means when they go to the shareholders meeting, they have clout. And they can decide the course of what it takes. So don't think that somebody that falls in that category didn't say, we perhaps need to corral this individual. Notwithstanding that, when you look at what they've been posting on those two platforms, nothing is incendiary and nothing is out of the norm of what they normally say. But I think what it is that in the case of Farrakhan, he's still paying for what he said in 1984 about Hymietown. So, be that as it may, that is what has happened. But now, I want to speak more to the approach now that it's happened, because the bell won't be unrung. So how do we address it? First of all, I believe that the nation itself, the Nation of Islam, is starting to take some steps, and I want to applaud those who post things for the minister on Facebook and Instagram. So just because he can't do it doesn't mean you can't do it. And so there are people that are doing that. So that's to be commended. And then also the outcry that, people have the right to state their opinion. Snoop Dogg, others, have stated their opinion. But now that raises another issue. We have a dearth of black, maybe I shouldn't use such big words. Let me back up. We have a lack of black media on the air these days. Now, we have a lot of podcasts and broadcasts, even such as this one, that are popping up everywhere. But we don't have concerted black media that addresses black issues the way we once did. Doesn't exist. Many of the major players don't have it. Major broadcast arenas don't have it. Black newspapers on kibbles and bits all over the country. So it's tough, and you don't hear black voices the way you once did. So that's one part of the equation. Here's the second part of the equation. Facebook has not existed that long. It was in somebody's mind, they executed it, and now here we have it. It's a platform that seemingly is taking over the world. What's to say that this can't be replicated in a different way? What am I saying? What's to say that an ingenious person of color can't do the same thing, where we can begin to raise our issues and have our own conversations? Facebook's not going away, but you can create an alternative to Facebook where people can share ideas and where you can monetize and have your own platform. It is not out of the realm of the impossible. And see, let's not get into this conversation that, well, we don't work together. No. What you have to understand is very few of these folk that you give all of this power to, saying that they work together, are really that monolithic. The only difference is that they have been, for lack of a better term, programmed to work together to get this money. And we haven't. And there are laws and structures that have helped to keep us where we are. The ghetto didn't happen. The ghetto was made. The ghetto was legislated. The ghetto was redlined. It didn't just happen. The mindset of the hood didn't happen by happenstance, and it didn't happen because of black folk were trifling. A lot of times black folk became trifling, some of us, because of the circumstances in which we were placed in this thing that was legislated. But now here's the issue. Now that we know, what are we going to do about it? That's the issue. So think about this even as you wrestle with the brother minister not being on the Facebook airwaves. What's to say you can't take a message he's done and put it on there? What's to say that the nation can't create their own Facebook platform or their own platform? What's to say we can't create our own platform as a people? What's stopping us? And if you have a true diaspora mindset, what's stopping us from linking up with our brothers and sisters elsewhere in the Caribbean and Africa and creating cross-cultural dynamics and having some serious conversations? One of the things that I noticed, I don't know how it would get done. You know, there's a car company in Ghana right now that's building some significant cars for their marketplace. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing if I could sit here in Memphis and buy one of those Ghanaian cars and drive it around town? What kind of statement would that make? And they make SUVs durable for their landscape, for the reality of their potholes. They have major potholes in their street, would fit in real well in Memphis. We got potholes you can swim in Memphis. So what if I were able to get one of those vehicles and drive it around? What statement would that make? Where'd you get that? And then you'd be able to tell them there's a black car builder in Ghana. See, that's what I'm talking about. Thinking outside the box. Let me preach for a little bit. I can't help myself. Matter of fact, just dealt with this text yesterday. Matthew 7:7-12, when Jesus says, ask and it shall be given to you, seeking you shall find, knocking the door shall be open. And then it ends with the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Bring that together this way for this reason. When we hear the first, maybe 3 verses of what I've cited, or 4 verses, we start asking for trinkets, for stuff, you know, and then the Bible's a progressive word. Everything you need to know about a subject is not always in the same place. So when you go to the book of James, it says, and you don't have because you don't ask. And then when you ask that you may fulfill your selfish desires and your lusts. So what we do, we ask for stuff. We ask for little trinkets. We ask for things that won't empower us, but that'll just make us seem big to the folk around us. But why don't we start asking God for the impossible, things that will build others up, things that will build us up? Why don't we start asking God for a change and an eradication of some of these isms and schisms that keep folk apart? Why don't we start asking God to show us and help us how to rebuild our communities and how to make it so that I can still live in my neighborhood even if it starts to develop? We get coffee houses and all that. How can I stay where I stay? How can there be room for me? How can I prosper? How can my neighbor prosper? We have to start looking at things differently, have different type of conversations than the ones we keep having. And I believe when we have those conversations, we'll see change. All right? Time for me to go. And as I go, brother, man, sister, woman, young boy, young girl, put your mind in gear. Put your thinking cap on. Peace.
Hi, I'm Deidre Malone, the host of Dialogue with Deidre. You can find us on the M1 TV network on YouTube. Subscribe and follow us. You can also find us on Facebook at M1 TV Network, Twitter, M1 TV Network 2, and Instagram, M1 TV Network 2. Please follow us so you can keep up to date with what's going on the M1 TV network with Dialogue with Deidre and Black Thought.